Hashtag Britt Westbourne walks back through the fire, and Port Charles isn't ready. On September 11th, the sliding doors of General Hospital parted and delivered a shock many in Port Charles never expected to feel again. Britt Westbourne, once mourned as a casualty of the hook, is alive, upright, and newly tempered by the blaze she and Jason Morgan outran at 5 Poppies. Her reappearance doesn't simply restore a familiar face to the corridors, it tears open sutures that were never fully healed, between lovers who broke each other, between a mother and daughter who weaponized secrets, and between a hospital and the legacy it tries to protect. What comes back with Britt is not just a woman, it's a reckoning. Hashtag the day the lights flickered at GH. Hospitals learn to metabolize crisis. Still, there's a particular hush that travels faster than a page when a ghost chooses to live again. Nurses' stations tilt into whispers, clinicians pause mid-chart, security cross-checks a badge twice. The Hook era left phantom pains in this building, and Britt's death was one of the wounds that shaped it. The news that she survived, a pivot carved through a nightmare mission at 5 Poppies with Jason, resets the temperature of the room. For administrators, it means a fresh wave of compliance questions and PR triage. For the people who loved or loathed Britt, it means unfinished business is suddenly standing in the elevator with them. Hashtag a city with a long memory. Port Charles remembers who you were in tests, who you claim to be. Britt knows that better than anyone. She wore the labels once: troublemaker, schemer's daughter, brilliant if volatile physician. She clawed toward something better, faltered, and kept going. Survival has a way of distilling a person. The Britt who steps back into GH looks like someone who has made peace with the fact that redemption isn't a single, soaring act, but a ledger you balance every day. She is not surprised by suspicion, nor seduced by applause. She is braced for both. Hashtag Jason, the unfinished equation. No return would be complete without the gravity of Jason. The two share a history that refuses to calcify, a kinetic, inconvenient chemistry forged in danger and frayed by duty. The last time their lives truly aligned, he chose a path that demanded he stand next to Carly at an altar, not out of romance but out of necessity, a gambit designed to keep a kingdom from crumbling while Sunny's empire recalibrated. Britt understood the logic and never forgot the cut. It taught her a brutal lesson about where she ranked in his hierarchy, and about the cost of loving someone who answers to a code larger than intimacy. They have now survived something together that reduces small talk to ash. 5 Poppies leaves its own imprint, shared adrenaline, unspoken gratitude, the paradox that near death sharpens desire and deepens caution at the same time. The easy impulse is to fall back into the old current. The wiser move is to respect the burn. If sparks fly again, and they will, it won't be because Britt forgot the past. It will be because she refuses to repeat it. Hashtag Carly, the permanent fault line. Then there is Carly, the pressure point that never cools. She and Britt have drawn lines in the same sand more than once, and neither is built to erase them. Even without vows complicating the topography, Carly sits at a crossroads of Jason's loyalty, Sunny's shadow, and GH's orbit. For Britt, sharing air with Carly means living inside a permanent stress test, turf, pride, maternal ferocity, and a competing definition of what's best for the people they care about. They don't have to throw drinks to be dangerous, their very presence in each other's lives is enough to trigger alarms. Expect civility attempt after civility attempt, punctured by honesty sharp enough to sterilize a room. Hashtag the Albrecht reckoning. The most volatile reunion, though, is not romantic. It's maternal. Liesl Albrecht mourned a daughter she believed she had lost to violence, grief that corroded and hardened her in equal measure. The revelation that Britt is alive is balm and blade at once. For Britt, the road back to her mother is less a victory lap than a probationary period. Liesl is a woman who has done monstrous things in the name of love and survival, then spent years trying to earn a version of herself she could live with. That history is not erased by joy. Trust is a muscle, you rebuild it through repetition, not speeches. And yet, there is something luminous about the way these two find each other again. Their dynamic has always been a waltz of intellect and instinct, cruelty repurposed into protection, barbed humor hiding tenderness. To reunite them is to reawaken one of the show's most singular bonds. The audience knows it, the actors know it, and the story feels it. Port Charles would never accept Britt's return without the counterpoint of Liesl's fierce, flawed love. Hashtag what she did, and the price of knowing. Survival stories don't come free. The trip through 5 poppies demanded choices that no medical ethics seminar prepares you for. Britt returns with knowledge she did not use to possess and a list of actions she can't untake. Some of those choices saved lives. Some will invite questions from the kind of people who prefer their heroes spotless and their villains obvious. She is neither, and she never was. That is precisely why her arc lands. Inside General Hospital, that messiness has consequences. The board will want assurances. Risk management will count scenarios. Colleagues will decide whether to judge, forgive, or both. Law enforcement may sniff around the edges of her survival, probing who pulled which strings and why. And if the WSB chooses to harvest intelligence from the operation that spat Britt and Jason back into the world, conflicting agendas will materialize, each with a perfectly compelling argument and a perfectly corrosive outcome. Hashtag the hospital that must choose itself. GH has been battered by scandal before, serial killers, mob spillover, corruption that wore a suit to work. With Britt's resurrection, the institution faces a subtler test. Can it be the place that heals its own? Can it hold a complex physician to account while still valuing what she brings when she's at her best? Expect leadership to juggle optics and outcomes, quiet reviews, public statements about safety, private calculations about donor confidence. Expect staff to fracture and cohere by turns. Expect patients, the true north of any hospital, to sense more than they are told. Hashtag reinvention, one small decision at a time. Every character talks about starting over, few do the unglamorous labor of it. Britt's version is not a brand new persona but a re-edited life. Reinvention looks like showing up to rounds when you'd rather hide. It looks like telling the truth before it's teased out of you. It looks like setting boundaries with the men whose storms once defined your forecast. It looks like letting your mother love you without letting her rewrite you. It looks like remembering that saving one patient does not absolve you of harm done to another, and that you keep practicing anyway. If she returns to medicine, it won't be as the provocateur who treats brilliance like a hall pass. It will be as a physician who knows how quickly the ground can give way and how important it is to plant yourself anyway. If she chooses leadership, she'll have to reconcile authority with humility. If she chooses research, she'll have to shoulder the scrutiny that accompanies funding and results. Every path requires her to become legible to herself. Hashtag Jason's new dilemma. Jason thrives in binaries, protect or neutralize, stay or go. Britt scrambles that clarity. To let her close is to invite a future he doesn't control. To hold her away is to deny a connection that persisted through fire and false funerals. Meanwhile, alliances that once justified his choices have shifted. Sunny's world has been through its own convulsions, Carly's is never static, the city's balance of power bends with every arrest, disappearance, and return. Jason's code will demand that he define where Britt fits. The answer will say as much about him as it does about her. Hashtag Carly's calculus. Carly's best decisions come when she's forced to calculate for the long term. Britt's return interferes with that math. The instinct to defend what's hers, to guard her children, her interests, and the man who has saved her more times than anyone should have to, will collide with the knowledge that Port Charles works best when its fiercest women do not insist on mutually assured destruction. Carly is not built to be small. The challenge will be choosing when to be strategic instead. Hashtag Liesl's second chance. For Liesl, a daughter regained is a chance to write a gentler chapter without pretending the old ones didn't happen. She can model what accountability looks like for someone who once confused loyalty with righteousness. She can let Britt fail without reaching for manipulation as medicine. And she can remember, viscerally, daily, that time is a gift, not a guarantee. Their scenes will hum because the actors carry history in their eyes, but the story will sing because both characters understand how easily they could have missed this chance altogether. Hashtag the moral of the fire. Five Poppies was not just a plot device, it was a crucible. It burned away the costumes everyone wore to make their compromises seem noble. What's left for Britt is a stripped-down self, not innocent, not irredeemable, and not interested in being trapped by either label. She brings with her a warning for anyone who still believes they'll be able to explain their choices neatly when the alarms go off. You don't get to curate chaos. You get to endure it, learn from it, and choose what you won't trade away next time. Hashtag what to watch as the story unspools. Watch Jason and Britt try to speak plainly while history pulls at their sleeves. Watch Carly weigh peace against pride and decide whether she can live with détente. Watch Liesl relearn how to mother a woman who has grown in the dark. Watch GH fight to be a place that saves and reforms without forgetting what's been done within its walls. Watch the WSB sniff, the board assess, the city gossip, and the audience argue, because complicated women make soap towns honest, and Britt has always been complicated in the most televisable way. Her return isn't a miracle so much as an invitation. Port Charles can fall back into its old reflexes, tribal, territorial, punitive, or it can dare something better, which is to let a flawed survivor rebuild where everyone can see her do it. Either way, Britt Westbourne has come home with her eyes open. That alone guarantees trouble. And trouble, on this show, is where the truth usually lives.